As time goes on, the relationship changes inside with the hostages and their captors, and outside with the negotiators and the captors. What process, they're getting to know each other inside as people, right? What should you do in the B'nai B'rith building or in the aircraft on its way to Entebbe airport? Or is that up to the captor? He won't let you talk.
In our experience, it was completely up to the captors. There being this imposition of silence where they weren't too eager to talk to you or to answer your questions. I think the relationship probably did have some effect in that most of us were bound, your hands behind your back, and if the binding was too tight, a person was beginning to suffer, the one in charge would loosen it a bit. And there were certain acts of civility of that type, but essentially the relationship did not become that close, although I understand it did in one of the other buildings that the Hanafis had taken over, the district building.
How about at Entebbe?
I was never touched. I think they tried to keep away from us. That was not, they would say on the one hand that nothing would happen to us provided we did what they told us to do. And then they'd say in the next sentence, but if you don't do what we tell you to do, we will certainly, harm you. And you knew that they didn't want to kill us especially. So they tried to take care of us. They fed us, and if you had a medical problem, there was a doctor there. And, if you wanted aspirin or something like that, they would try to satisfy your needs.
I can't resist this question. You had the dubious pleasure of a visit from Idi Amin.
3 times.
3 times?
Yes.
How did he impress you?
Well, you're basically very frightened of the people that have hijacked the plane. They are the people that have really, that you see as the ones that are the most frightening. And they are the ones you had to deal with. But when Idi Amin came in, you had to stand up and applaud and, show respect. But I'd listen to what he said.
One gets the vision of an egomaniacal clown, a dangerous clown.
He presented, to me anyway, basically as civilized as he could be. He wasn't frightening, but except he was the only one that ever in any way threatened us, and that was the last day, right before they released us. He told us that the reason that his soldiers were 50 yards away from the building was because the PLO had mined the building, and if anyone had tried to escape, they would have shot the person and the building would have exploded. And that was the only time I heard that.
When you are working from the outside at a man within a bank holding a gun to our friend's head, you are what? Asking him, what's the problem? Can we help you?
Basically, we're here to help you. And I think I am feeling it. When I say we are, the individual who's negotiating is feeling every response that man is feeling. You're feeling a certain amount of the terror. You're feeling the fear. The same fear that the hostages are feeling, you are feeling as well when you're dealing with them. And basically, one of the opening questions is, we are here to help you. And that's actually what we're trying to do. We are engaging in sort of a lay therapy in dealing with him. And that's
Not
what we're
only
trying to do.
therapy, the one major incident I was involved in as a negotiator in Vienna when 2 Arabs captured Jewish hostages in order to prevent the transmigration to Israel of Soviet Jews to Israel. There, the most striking thing of this experience that I described almost verbatim was, just as the lieutenant says, that you approach them and saying, well, what do you want, and how can we get you what you want, within reason and so on, and let's talk about it. But after about 10 minutes of that interview, which of course is unforgettable because you stand there and the whole Austrian police force has their guns trained on you in the airport, after 10 minutes it was like in the office. It was like a psychiatric interview in the office. And he talked about his private life, and of course you had to listen to the spouting of this propaganda and all that kind of thing. But, he related on a human level, which is not saying anything for the terrorists. It's saying something for the method of humanizing it in that manner that then one can at least figure out of whether or not one wants to do this, that, or the other thing. It's the de-glamorizing, the defusing, the de-escalating it, precisely the opposite of what the showification, namely the dramatization of it, wants to do.
Let me ask you how you feel about deal-making. Now, in one case recently, the police agreed to let him go if he released the hostage, that he would have amnesty. And then, of course, they didn't give it. They arrested him and
Why
put
do you
him in
say
jail.
of course?
Huh?
Well,
Why do you say of course? It's
that-
not of course at all.
Of course, in that instance.
In
he's
that
thinking
instance,
in
they
that.
did.
Right.
But I think
in another instance, the man demanded, as the price of releasing his hostage, a conversation with President Carter.
And the
think that
president
was-
came through.
And the president did call the man.
Yes, and after the first incident, you had six follow-up crimes within 4 days, and to the extent that we know, again, we shouldn't generalize. Professor is looking at me, and I feel like in school. So we shouldn't generalize. After Carter agreed to talk to the man after he had released the hostage, we don't have any follow-up crimes. Now, maybe that doesn't say anything.
we had after that. We had crimes.
No.
We had 3 crimes, 3 hostage situations in New York after that. But
Yeah.
the point being, as
But
far as
not
making
as
deals is
follow-up.
concerned, number one, we couldn't grant amnesty in New York. That's a prosecutorial job, not a police job. Secondly, we're concerned about credibility for the next job.
Right.
And the same as Bob
Absolutely.
Rabe down in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
He was concerned about credibility. People complained about the fact that the one Hanafi Muslim got out without bail. We have people get out in New York without bail every day in the
Right.
week. It's no big deal.
Right.
He was under the control of the courts, and the police functioned properly. As far as the president making a phone call, I think when you take the top man, who do you go beyond that? The Pope? Next, you have to keep the...
Peculiar sense of hierarchy.
Well, the point is, well, that's where I was brought up. David is not here with the plaque. But
I don't know.
I think this is a very important point, really, because I think this is perhaps one of the greatest aspects, really, of public concern, this question of making a deal. I said at the time, and it's in print, I called President Carter's action on this ill-advised. I think he was badly advised on this. Obviously, the decision was his, but I think the advice that he received was very, very bad. I agree very much with what Frank said. You have got to insulate the top man. You simply can't allow the top man to get into the negotiation at all. Involvement here outside the hierarchy is very difficult.
What about deal-making? Giving him his
well-
freedom, a plane to fly him to Ethiopia?
Let me make quite clear my position on this. I think you should never promise what you can't deliver.
Right.
precisely.
I think that is a cardinal rule. And I think having made a promise, you should never renege on it.
Right.
I think what you
I
have,
absolutely
everything
agree
is
with you.
negotiable. I mean, we're not going to say that, there's only 2 things, as far as we're concerned, that are not negotiable. That's weapons and other people. We will not give them other
You
people.
will not substitute police for the hostage.
Oh, yes.
We will
might
not do that. Some people do. We will
did
not
that
do
in
it.
Germany. We advised that in Germany. It worked out very well.
Well, you know, there are many things that work out this time and that time, but once you
Right.
start putting a policeman in there, your policemen outside are now going to be dealing subjectively with that case.
Right.
Instead of being objective and dealing with a civilian. It's like a doctor operating on his own son.
But you should not generalize. We have
No, but one other point I think that comes out very well, and I think that this is really the secret of the success that New York City Police has had, and that is discipline. The tremendous discipline that is necessary both for
Crowd
violent...
control, media control.
Exactly, and this professionalism that the New York
Right.
City Police has is to be commended.
And
New York City police are great police.
Thank you.
Well, I just want you to know that.
Oh, it is.
I have to
Discipline
say,
is another
26
name
hours.
for
I have to say the same
coordination.
for Washington.
Washington, D.C., too.
I will
Yes,
say
it
the
is.
same for Vienna.
They were the
Vienna has a great police
We
force.
have nothing but great police
The
force.
police all over the world, including Cicero, Illinois, are the greatest in the world. We'll be right back.